A man was found with an axe in his head in a car park. That's somebody's loved one.
And because of that, we should have an answer. The evidence is pointing to a real messed up investigation to start with. There was corruption, and it does now mean we still don't know what happened.
Welcome to True Crime Unravelled, the show in which criminologist Doro Townshend and me, Yinka Bokinni, dive right into the heart of some of the biggest true crime stories. And we'll be having a look at some of the amazing documentaries and dramas that have brought these cases to life. In this episode, we'll be looking at the murder of private investigator Daniel Morgan, who back in 1987 was found dead in a pub car park with an axe in his head. And we'll be taking a look at the docudrama series Murder in the Car Park, which tells the story of the 34-year investigation into his death and asks the question why this murder has never been solved.
Private Detective Daniel Morgan was murdered in the car park of a pub in Sydenham, South London.
It wasn't like other investigations I've been involved in. This one seems to be pretty loose.
I don't think Daniel collected enemies. I think in the job that he was doing, it's inevitable.
For someone to not leave a fingerprint, a DNA, or anything like that, how would you know not to leave any evidence about? A police officer would, wouldn't he?
It was like a bombshell. To arrest a member of the squad investigating the murder, I mean, it's probably unprecedented.
Police have still not charged any suspects.
The murder investigation failed out of incompetence.
We're supposed to forget this and let it go, but I won't. Ever, ever.
You have Daniel Morgan. He was a private investigator and he was found dead with an axe in his head. He was found in the car park of the Golden Lion pub in Sydenham in 1987. Since the murder, there were 4 major police investigations, 1 intelligence gathering operation, and 2 reviews by the Met Police. Despite all of this, arguably one of the most investigated crimes ever, still no convictions. This is still an unsolved case.
It kind of feels like there had to have been some reasons why the investigations have kept failing.
You'd have to imagine so, because this amount of money, this amount of time, this amount of resource to get no closer to an answer, it just seems suspicious, right? Earlier this very year, there was a very damning government-backed report, and it observed that the Met had carried out what was referred to as a form of institutional corruption. The murder scene wasn't searched properly, it was left unguarded, alibis weren't even sought for key suspects, so evidence is pointing to a real messed up investigation to start with. That corruption by the police officers prevented justice from being served to the killers.
Is this a case of failure after failure, not handling things correctly, and then trying to cover up those mistakes? Or is it, we're not going to do this properly for a reason?
It's impossible to say for sure, right, because there is not a conclusion to this case. You'll see in the documentary there are contradicting ideas. There are some people who say there was no corruption. There are some people who say the police were involved from the get-go. They didn't want Daniel Morgan around. It all got very complicated, and this is a docudrama that you really have to pay attention to.
Oh, blink and you miss it. So much happens.
So much happens, and it goes so much bigger than a murder in a car park.
So we have a clip, and in this scene we see Sid Fillery taking the initial suspect, Jonathan Reese's initial statement, despite the fact that he was moonlighting for Southern investigations. And then we see Fillery's version of the events.
With a murder, you need to know the man. Who is he? What does he do? Is he married? Has he got children? Well, normally the person who does that is the espoused or the partner, whatever. Well, in this case, it was Mrs. Morgan, and she was in no state to do it. So Dougie Campbell asked me to take a statement of John, and I did.
It does feel wrong that if someone's friends with a police officer, that they were interviewed by that police officer.
It's not appropriate.
It feels wrong.
I find it really odd that everyone is super close to the investigation and they're all just questioning each other.
Yeah.
Daniel did mention to me that he had received serious threats from some person whom he had dealings. This I have seen lead to situations of quite serious confrontation.
Serious incidents of confrontation? Like, what does that mean?
Are we talking weapons? Are we talking violent language?
Are we talking axes?
He knew a lot more about what was going on in the business, and in fact knew there'd been a fairly serious argument between Rees and Daniel Morgan.
Is your friend going to like pry and get down into the nitty-gritty? Would they do that? Probably not.
Like, it's very naughty.
They were friends, they went to the pub together.
And his actions may, and I have to say may have contributed to the collapse of the first investigation. It just screams, you know, more could have been done and they're not really taking anything seriously. It's time for another clip. And in this, we see a key witness in one of the trials. Allegations surface about the nature of his relationship with the senior investigating officer, David Cook.
Coaching of the witness had taken place.
It just collapsed. Bomb, gone.
If everyone's acquitted, that's it. Another case dropped. Another investigation with no result.
So, David Cook allegedly coached a key witness, Gary Eaton. Before we get into it, what does coaching mean?
So coaching is referring to running through the statement before it's made. That means that the person making the statement might be privy to more information. They might know a bit more about what to say or how to say it in a way that will make them believable. That statement has to be thrown out. We can't trust anything it says now.
I just want to know, why would someone do that?
Because of the media, because of the family. By getting that outcome, we are kind of benefiting the greater good.
The ends justifying the means.
I know they did it, I just need the information.
Yeah, but DCI Cook was a senior investigator. Surely he knew better.
It speaks to the pressure that was felt on this case. There must have been a lot, and there must still be a lot all these years later, because it's still not solved. And I can only imagine that that pressure led people who should have known better to do bad things.
Another clip, if you will. In this one, we see both Jonathan Rees and Daniel Morgan's brother Alistair talking about how the case has affected their lives. We do see as well the Met own up and apologise for their failings.
I don't think the Met Police give a fuck about the Daniel Morgan murder or his family or anybody else. It's always been about protecting their own image.
I don't think the Metropolitan Police ever really had a true appetite to solve this crime.
If they don't have the appetite to solve it, why would not solving it benefit them?
You have such a good point there, though. Like, why wouldn't they want to solve the crime?
The government has finally agreed to the demands of Mr. Morgan's family and ordered an independent review into the unsolved murder and the scale of police corruption around it.
And fair play to the family for pushing for that continuously. Continuing investigation.
But when do you call it a day and say, you know what, we don't know what happened?
I suppose to the family, no day is going to be good at that.
If they have got away with all of this corruption, I think it's a big ask. I lean more to the
incompetence.
Yes. What do they possibly have to gain by spending all this money, having themselves all over the news?
It looks bad for them. Trust in the police is already pretty low.
So what do they have to gain? Like, unless the call is coming from inside the house and they are in on this to the nth degree.
Could it not be both? Could it be that someone was involved? Because of that, intentional corruption began.
I think we're asking for a lot here.
Maybe, but then maybe that leads to another bit of corruption and then that's been done shoddily and it's coincidence, but it's also...
Well, they're fantastic at it then. The failures that we've seen in Daniel's killing, they've been washed over by the headline of corruption.
This case, all of the sort of offshoots of conversation we've had, corruption, it doesn't matter if it was incompetence or intentional even really. The fact of the matter is, there was corruption, and it does now mean that we still don't know what happened.
Not only is there a murderer out there who has gotten away for how many years now, 34? Scot-free, living his life, going on holiday, Lanzarote. There's also a family who have lost out on this chunk of time with their loved ones.
The closure has never been given to them. They can't even move on.
A man was found with an axe in his head in a car park. That's somebody's loved one.
Yeah, and because of that, we should have an answer.
And we don't have justice.
And we don't have justice.
If you want to watch the full series of Murder in the Car Park, you can on All 4, along with a whole other range of amazing true crime programmes.